You're listening to the Resilient Author Podcast, the show that goes beyond the pages to explore the grit, courage, and resilience it takes to write and publish a book. I'm your host, Kary Youman, and each week I sit down with authors to uncover the stories behind their stories, the challenges they faced, the breakthroughs they experienced, and the wisdom they've gained along the way. Whether you're working on your first chapter or celebrating your launch, this is the place to find inspiration and practical takeaways for your own author journey. Let's dive in. Those who may not know you yet, what's your book about and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Well, my first book is a memoir. My first book is my story, and it really is from inception, sort of origin to getting involved in drinking and drugs, to being in recovery, and being in recovery for the last several decades, and what it has meant to me and how I have built my life. And that's really what I want people to take away is how I built my life, because that's what I'd like to help other people do. And if they can take away some clues and some things that might help them build their lives in a meaningful way, I feel like I will have done my job with writing my book.
I've been in recovery myself for about a decade and some change, and I know everyone's story is different. Where did the idea for the book first come from, and was there like a particular moment where you're like, I need to write this?
Kind of, yeah. I had, all these things that go on in our minds, right? In terms of, oh, this might be a good idea. This might be a good idea. Can I do it? Am I a writer? Am I good enough? And, all of those things. And so I was about 20 years into recovery let's say 18 years into my recovery, and I met my wife, or my to-be wife, and I was relating stories to her of my youth and how I was and the things I did. And she's looking at me and she's like, I'm just not seeing it. That's not you anymore. And I said, well, you're right. It's not me anymore. And at that time I said, remind me to write a book someday. So that was I guess the genesis of the me saying that I'm going to do it, and speaking those words. But then it took me another probably 18 years or 20 years to actually write it, to write my first book. And in between that time, I wrote about 3 paragraphs, and that was about it. So, but once I started, it came out readily.
Yeah, you're speaking to something that I hear a lot of authors talk about, and it's just that resistance. Life is lifing. A lot of us will deal with self-doubt, maybe it's perfectionism or just life getting in the way. Are you able to sort of pinpoint like what the biggest challenge while you were writing the book, like what that was and how you were able to sort of navigate through that?
The biggest challenge while I was writing the book was probably the welling up of the stories and the emotions and the pain that I caused to my family and people in my life. And it was a very therapeutic process for me, because so many things came up that I remembered, but it was also difficult in the moment sometimes to think about, you know, the look on my mom's face, or my dad's disgust, or, the people that I hurt who were my friends or girlfriends or whatever it was. It was just, that part of it was difficult. The writing part, quite honestly, once I started and once I committed, it was, I don't want to say it was easy, but it just flowed. And the emotional part of it is what was most difficult for me.
Mm, that resonates. I mean, can you speak to just the process of writing the book? Like how did that change you personally, spiritually, or just professionally?
It's funny because and you being in recovery, Kary, you get it. We can jump into something and go both feet, both hands, head, arms, everything. And being in recovery, I know you've experienced that, and I experienced that. I would, and it hasn't stopped, quite honestly, in the 2.5 years since I wrote my first book. But ideas come and things come that I would want to write about, and I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with an idea, and I would go to the office. I'd put my robe on, and sometimes it's cold. It gets cold up here, and I would put my robe on, and I'd go up into the office, and I'd start writing. And my wife, she understands me at this point, but I might not see her for half the day or more after getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So the process was, and I go with sort of what resonates with me. And if it felt like I needed to go right and I had a whole bunch of stuff to get out, I would just go get it out. It didn't matter what time it was. It didn't matter how much time I spent. All that mattered to me was getting it out. And if I thought of a story or I thought of an idea, I would have to go write. And so that part of it was an interesting process, but it was also a beautiful process because it just came out of me. And I think from a spiritual perspective, that was really healing for me to because some of those stories I hadn't thought of in forever, 40 years or 50 years, things from being a kid. And so uh, I'm a big believer that a part of the spiritual process, for me, has been taking out the garbage. If I can take out the things that are stopping me, or move those things out of my life or out of my consciousness or out of my heart, and replace them with things that are better for me or more meaningful for me, or more resonant with me. I feel like that helps clear the way for me to look at life and to experience life more from that spiritual perspective. And writing the book really helped do that for me. And professionally, I think it helped me be a better writer overall. Just going out to write as opposed to stopping myself because I don't know if I'm going to do the proper job. Just writing helped me immensely, I think, professionally also.
Mhm. Growing up, or even in high school or college, did you ever identify as a writer, or sort of getting into that mindset was a shift in itself as well?
It was a shift, but interestingly enough, high school was just a waste for me in terms of writing or doing anything else productive. That was a disaster. But um, when I got sober and I went through treatment and began in recovery, I thought, I really want to go to college. And nobody in my family had ever graduated from college, so that was just a cool thing to do. For me, it felt good. It felt like I was moving my life in a direction, and that felt good. But I majored in sociology slash criminal justice, and I minored, interestingly enough, in English. And I don't know why I didn't have any thoughts of being a writer or anything like that, but I enjoyed probably more the reading part of it than the writing part of it. Um, Although we had to do writing, and that was fine. But I think my writing started and it was while I was in college, but I was writing because I was scared. I was miserable. I didn't know how to do life. I didn't know how to do recovery. I was new in recovery. And so I'd pull out a yellow legal pad and I would just write, and I would write, and I would write, and I would write to get things out. And I think that's probably the beginning of, very basic, sort of archaic me writing. could never have turned into a book. It would have been horrifying, but that was how I helped myself at that time. And I think there were vestiges of that when I started writing my books.
Mm. Yeah, there's something really powerful about just letting yourself write and just get out what's there. To your point, it probably would have been a pretty messy book, but I would imagine that was cathartic just to start getting that energy to flow. That really resonates. Daryl, as someone who's walked through such a major life transformation, it sounds like you've been in sobriety, or should I say recovery, for decades now. You've sort of rebuilt your life. How do you how do you define success now, and what would you say helps you stay balanced as you continue growing, in your personal and professional life?
From a balance perspective, I think the most important thing for me is to develop habits over time and things that I commit to over time that um, help me continue to see life from a perspective of um, it's just okay. Life is no matter what's going on, it could be really terrible things, it could be really difficult things, and the longer we're on this planet, the more difficult things we go through. That's just the nature of it. And also I would say the more beautiful things we go through. So for me, it's been developing the habits, and I uh, meditation and breath work and gratitude and exercise and eating right and all of the things that are contributing to me being more balanced and less, I guess, susceptible to the ups and downs that life is going to hand me anyway. Because life's coming, life is coming. It's happening. There's nothing I can do about it. People go away, people die, difficult things happen. And the more I can build myself throughout the journey of life, and to me that's physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional, and all of those need to be attended to. And that's really what I've tried to do, and to develop the things and continue to practice the things as consistently as possible that build the internal strength that I'm going to need to withstand what comes, and even thrive through what comes. And I think it's important for me to perceive life as an opportunity to continue to get better and to continue to experience more outside of me, but also inside of me. So probably, I don't know, 15 years into recovery.
Mm.
And we didn't grow up with much money. My dad was a mechanic and my mom took care of us kids, and so there wasn't a lot there. I had an older brother and a younger sister, and so when I got into recovery, I wanted to make money. I wanted to experience something that I hadn't experienced. And so I tried to do that, and that was my definition of success. And probably 15 years in, my definition of success, after getting my butt handed to me 1,000 times and it being very difficult to achieve financial success, I started looking at success as waking up in the morning with a smile on my face, and whatever that entails, which to me it goes back to the habits that I've developed and the things that I'm doing to take care of myself. And that's what success is to me today. It's waking up in the morning with a smile on my face, and that includes having enough money so that I don't have to worry about that all the time. And I think that's an important aspect, although it's only one piece of sort of a holistically successful life.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's hard to argue that waking up with a smile on your face is a form of success. I think that's so easy to sort of overlook. You mentioned something that I selfishly want to just dive into just a bit more, but you talked about breath work. I personally have been just researching and getting into it more. Would you be open to talking a little bit more about your breath work practice or just sort of how that has impacted your life?
Absolutely. A friend of mine who he's he's just one of the most kind, wonderful human beings I've ever met in my life, and his name is Amit, and he taught me meditation because I was so frazzled in my mind and just going and going and things living rent free in my mind. And he taught me meditation, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. And I have been practicing on and off, but certainly more on over the last many years. And that's been a wonderful experience. And he came to my wife and I 5 years ago, maybe, and he and I had always talked about breath work, and he was going to write a book. And he's a pulmonary doctor in Boston, and so the breath work thing, from a science perspective, is something he loves. He loves the science of it, but he's from India, and so the sort of the pranayama, the Hindu and Ayurvedic, all of these different disciplines and belief systems are very important to him as well. So he has married those things, and he calls it breathonance, and that's what his breath work is. It's pranayama breath work, but really what it has done for me and what it entails, it's about 20 minutes in the morning of different forms of breathing, and uh, there's a bunch of different breaths, but there are fast breaths, there are slow breaths, there are breaths where you just empty all of your air. There's breaths where you breathe and hold it, and all kinds of different things. And it's basically what it's designed to do is calm the nervous system, calm us down. And what it has done for me is allowed me to go into my meditation, which I do right after that, in an incredibly calm, open, receiving state. Um,
Mm.
and and that's what it's done for me in the moment. But it also reverberates throughout the day, because during the day I think about paying attention to my belly and my breathing, which puts me in the moment immediately. And the breath coming in and out of my nostrils, and not breathing from here, but breathing from a deeper level in my solar plexus. And so it does a whole bunch of things for me that I believe enhance my life, but also I believe enhances the lives of those around me, because I'm better when I'm relaxed, and when I'm calm, and when I'm in the moment, and when I'm able to be engaged with people, and breath work helps with all of those things.
Mm. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. I feel like we live in a society where it's very easy just to be cerebral and be in your head. And I found that the breath work, to your point, for me at least, it really gets me in my body. It helps me to become more present and just more in the moment. And like you said, we just end up being better people when we can be connected to ourselves. So I appreciate you sharing that. I
Of course.
want to take a little detour and talk a little bit more about the publishing process. I'm sure every author has a different journey when it comes to getting their book out into the world. Whether it's traditional, hybrid, or indie. Um, I'm curious, which path did you decide to take, and what would you say was the most challenging or rewarding part of getting your book like into people's hands?
It was I self-published,
Mhm.
and I used a self-publishing sort of coaching company, and they helped me through the process. They helped me with the cover, they helped me with the formatting, they helped me with all the different aspects of the process. And it was a wonderful process for me to learn from, and to gather some knowledge in terms of how this whole thing works. And I'm not a big, I'm more of a cowboy, you could say, in terms of, okay, let's just do it this way, and I won't look into it and I won't read about it. I'll just say, all right, I like these guys. Let's do it this way. And so that's what I did. But it was a wonderful process because I was able to do a lot of those things, and I was able to format my own book the next time when I did my second book. And so it was the hardest part, I would have to say, is the most fun part is putting it together. The hardest part is, okay, now that you got that done, how do you sell it? How do you get it into people's hands? And I've tried a number of different things to do that. And I've sold, I don't know, 1,000 or more books at this point, but which is great. But the money I've spent to sell 1,000 books, it just doesn't work. The math doesn't work.
The math's not mathing. Yeah.
No, the math is not mathing. So, but it's also been a journey that has led me to what a lot of people have said, which is developing other streams of income, whether it's coaching or, writing in other ways or training programs or whatever it is. And I'm in the process of doing that right now. So there's been an evolution with me from, okay, I'm going to write a book. Okay, I'm going to, put a cover on it. And that was the most exciting thing. You see a cover on your book and it shows up in the mail, the first one, you're like, oh man, who knew,
Yeah.
My mother-in-law was even excited. My joke.
Is she hard to get excited?
Yeah, well, she, yeah, a little bit about me anyway. But, and I say that mostly in jest. But anyway, so all of these things, which are milestones and they're cool and all that, but if we're going to pursue it, and if I was going to pursue it, I needed to find out different ways to move that process forward. And I'm in the midst of that right now. And it's risk taking and it's uncomfortable. And I'm not the guy who's, normally you would tag to do this sort of stuff, but I'm loving being in uncomfortable zones and learning new things. And I believe that these things will also help to get the book out there in more hands.
You were sort of talking about this a little bit, but now that your book is out in the world, like how have things shifted for you, in your work, in your relationships, or even just how you see your own story now? Like what has changed for you?
One big thing that changed, which is pretty amazing to me. So, as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I now have been married over 20 years, but
Wow.
so the book took 18 to write after we had that conversation. And a very interesting part of it was my wife, she was very helpful in terms of proofreading and hey, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, wow, you really were a nut job, all that sort of stuff. And
Giving it to you straight.
she does give it to me straight, which is great. But she said, I feel like I know you so much better, even though we've been together as long as we've been together.
Mhm.
And that was a really cool thing for me for me to experience. And I think for us to experience that,
Mm.
that she said that to me. And I have two stepsons, and I don't like the word stepsons, but my two sons, and they're wonderful, beautiful humans. And they both read the book and they're like, wow, he's not just this dude that we've known for, 18, 20 years, whatever it is.
Mm.
He is somebody who has a past and had a childhood and had difficulty and had, bad things happen. And he did some bad things, and he's a real human, and he was a kid like us, and, all that sort of stuff. I feel like it really enhanced people knowing me, and not
Mm.
just the guy that's the product of all that stuff, but how all that stuff went down. And that's been a really beautiful process to watch unfold.
Mm. I haven't really heard someone articulate it that way. What an incredible gift to get from, putting your story out there. It sounds like your family's been extremely supportive. That's really cool.
Very much so. Yes, thank you. It is an incredible gift.
Mm. So Daryl, resilience shows up different for all of us. Sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's faith, and sometimes it's community. What does resilience look like for you these days?
Resilience for me is, and I feel like it was more applicable in my younger years because I had to get up. I had to keep going. I had no choice. I wasn't going to a good place if I kept with the life that I was living. So, and I mean that from the perspective of before recovery, but I also mean that from the perspective of in recovery and building the life that I've wanted to build and getting knocked down and having to get up and getting knocked down again. And I think I feel like I've been knocked down more times than I've gotten up, but I guess that's not actually possible. So I have gotten up as many times as I've been knocked down, but and that was all resilience. And it had to do, you brought up faith, that had to do with faith, and it had to do with strengthening my faith in life and in whatever I choose to call, my faith in God, but not everybody has to do that, and I fully understand that, but that's what it is for me because there has been, because of the resilience and because I've been given the opportunity to be resilient and the strength and the faith to be resilient, I feel like that has further strengthened me. So I feel like how resilience plays in my life now is I'm committed to helping other people be resilient. I'm committed to sharing what a beautiful thing resilience is and how that can be experienced. And I don't, and I mean this in in a beautiful way, not having to do with me necessarily, but I don't have to think about myself that much anymore. And I think that's a beautiful product of living this life for a long time, is I can focus on other people. I can focus on helping. I can focus on helping people develop wonderful things in their life if that's what they choose.
Mm. Yeah, I hear that, Daryl. Speaking of being able to focus on other people, and sort of create that bridge, a lot of the listeners of this show are at some point of wanting to get a story out, but they haven't yet. What would you say to someone who feels called to write, but isn't sure they're ready or doesn't even know how to start?
I think that, and this goes back to discussions I've had with myself over time, and I heard somebody say a long time ago, and I believe it was a minister. He was a minister in recovery. His name was Jack Boland. He was from the Detroit area. He was a head of a church called the Unity Church, and I didn't go to church. I grew up going to church, but I have hardly ever gone to church since. But I go to church in here, if that makes sense.
It does.
And Jack Boland said, "Well, why are you asking for strength? And why are you asking for faith to go do a thing?" He said, "You've already been given the strength and you've already been given the faith. Your job is to just go do the thing." And and that is how it worked for me in many areas of my life. And I believe from the perspective of when I decided to write the book, all I needed to do was start writing. And then the path unfolded in front of me. It's really easy to get caught up in here and say, I'm not ready, or I just don't know if I have a story, or a number of different things that we can talk ourselves out of taking the action and, talk ourselves out of showing up to just start and just do it. And that's what I think the important thing is it doesn't have to be right the first time. It doesn't have to be right the second time, or at least I don't have to worry about that. All I need to do is start. And I have found almost every time in my life, I can't think of a time when it didn't happen, but if I start, I'm shown the way, and the way just opens up, and that's been a theme. And I know a lot of people that's been a theme for them as well. So if I were to give advice, it would be just sit down and start.
Mm. When you were saying that, it was kind of painting a picture. I'm sure you've seen Indiana Jones or at least heard of him, but there's a scene where he has to walk the bridge and none of the steps are there. He has to take the step. Um, yeah, you've seen that, right? You've seen it.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
mentioned that on a podcast about a year ago with a good friend of mine. That's the
Nice.
faith.
Yes. Yeah, I love that, Daryl.
Step on the yo, that's such a beautiful reference.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah.
painted the picture, so yeah, thank you. So before we close, Daryl, I'd love to know what you're up to now. What are you working on? What's coming up next? Any new books, projects, or just creative adventures you're excited about?
Thank you, Kary. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm semi-retired, which I've been busier than I've ever been in my life. I don't even know why I say I'm semi-retired. I'm really not. But I'm not doing what I had been doing for the last, 20, 30 years. I do a little bit of consulting, but outside of that, really what I'm looking at and what I'm developing, I've hired a marketing company to help me brand myself and my message and what I'd like to help people with that I believe will improve their lives. So I'm just getting off the ground with that. I'm doing little videos and I'm doing some writing and they just asked me to do an origin story, so I'm about to do that. And that's going to be around one-on-one coaching or group coaching or group coaching and trainings and that sort of thing. So that's probably the biggest thing. I do have in my phone, I have the little notes app, and I have two books written and published, and I have book 3, book 4, book 5, all in there, and I put notes down all the time. And book 3 is about 90% outlined, and book 4 and 5 are just ideas at this point. But that keeps me clipping along pretty good, and I would say I'm probably not going to start writing for another 6 months to a year in terms of book 3. I want to get the coaching thing down before I start writing another book.
Mm.
So that's what I'm up to. A lot of things that are TBD right now, but it's the joy is in the process, and I'm right in the middle of the process.
I love that. I won't ask you to give away what book 3 is about, but can you talk a little bit about your second book? I know you've kind of pointed to it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's called my first book is When I Stop Fighting. My second book is When You Stop Fighting. And it's
Mm,
based on what I believe is what everybody wants in this life, which is great relationships, which is some sort of meaning or purpose, peace of mind, contentment and fulfillment, and maybe some financial security. I believe those things are fairly universal in terms of what we all want. The problem is, or the question is, how do we go about getting those things? Because we can do a lot of things that stop us from getting those things, and it can have to do with addictions. It can have to do with not wanting to take risks. It can have to do with fears. There's a lot of things that can stop us from reaching what I like to call and what I call in the book true north. And so that's really what it's about. It's what do we want? What might be stopping us? How do we work through some of the things that might be stopping us? And then what does the road look like as it unfolds and we start to change, and what can we look forward to in terms of what's happening in here? And that's really the gist of what my second book is about.
I'll have to add that to my queue. I've got your first one, so I'll have to add that one as well.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. So Daryl, I'm going to wrap things up here shortly, but I'd like to invite you to the lightning round. I've got 5 questions for you, and you don't have to overthink it. Just speak from your heart.
Will do.
All right. What's one book that changed your life?
The 10 Commandments by Emmett Fox.
Hmm. If you could have dinner with any author, past or present, who would it be?
Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Hmm. When it comes to getting ideas out, are you more of a writer or a talker?
Writer.
Hmm. Finish this sentence. Writing my book taught me to.
To not be afraid of writing.
Hmm. In one word, what does resilience mean to you?
Strength.
Hmm. Well done, Daryl. So if you could leave one piece of advice or encouragement with our listeners, something they can carry along after this episode, what would it be?
This has to do with the title of my first book, but it's a brief story. If you have a couple minutes, Kary, to go through the story, it's really what changed my life, and it changed my writing. It changed everything. When I first got into recovery, one of my mentors, and they used to call them sponsors, I don't know if they still do, but a mentor of mine, he watched me as I wrestled with life. I wrestled with problems. I grew up with sort of this fairly tough upbringing. My parents were pretty tough-minded human beings, and no blame. They are what they are, or they were what they were, and completely cool. But it rubbed off on me, and so I was conditioned not to acquiesce, but always to fight and to put up battles and battle through this and battle through that. So as I was doing that, my mentor, he was listening to and watching me battle through life and battle through my problems, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, "Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops." And I was like, oh, and that's been ruminating in me ever since. It's been floating around inside of me ever since, but it's why I titled my first book, When You Stop Fighting. And I truly believe that the fights that we have in this lifetime aren't with things outside of us. They always start with the fight that we're having within. And if I can help quell that fight within, I can choose to accomplish anything in this life. And if I get myself out of the way, that brings me a long way toward accomplishing those things, including writing.
When you stop fighting, the fighting stops. Oof, man.
It's a good one, isn't it?
That's really good. Wow.
Yeah. He's a wise man.
Yeah. There's just some things that you hear and it's just like, wow, that's pure truth. Like your body just sort of like jolts. It knows it. It can feel it. Daryl, this has been extremely insightful. Before we wrap up, where can people find your book and just continue following your journey?
Thank you for that, Kary. My website is daryldittmer.com, which is DARYLDITTMER.com. It's currently an author website. I have a feeling, I don't know this, but I have a feeling it's going to change from an author to a sort of coaching and author website. But take a peek there and you can find my books. And I also have some journals that, I love it when people write because I think it's so healing. So I'm giving them an opportunity to get those journals if they'd like them. And my books are on Amazon. You can type in either my name and the books will show up, or type in When You Stop Fighting, or my second book, When I Stop Fighting. And those are the best places to find me and my work.
Excellent, Daryl. Thank you for sharing a piece of your story and your heart with us today. This is incredible. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kary. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Resilient Author Podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you both inspiration and practical tools for your own journey. If you've been carrying the idea for a book, but haven't started, or you started and feel stuck, I'd love to invite you to join my 5-day Speak Your Book Challenge. In just 5 days, you'll speak the outline of your first draft and discover how to turn it into a finished manuscript and a published book. You can join anytime at voicetobook.co/challenge. Until next time, keep going, stay resilient, and remember, your story matters.